Ferris is going to come and follow that up. Remember, we're trying to think of the needs of our village, our locality. I think Jonathan's opened our eyes too.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Maury is a really challenging bloke to deal with at times because, what did I describe his style as earlier on to somebody? An unfettered thinker, I think I said, which meant that I didn't quite understand what he said. So he's asked me to spend a few minutes talking about Grayshott's needs. Now, those of you who've seen me speak before, you know I tend to kind of rabbit on a bit. I've got a list of a few points here I particularly want to cover. But buried in all of this stuff is some quite deep philosophical thinking, which actually Jonathan, I'm very interested, opened up in his pitch just now. So I'll try and get to that fairly quickly if I can. But you know, if you're in business or probably, I don't know, if the Church of England sort of carries out SWOT analysis these days, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, it's a standard way of assessing a situation. Weaknesses and threats. Weaknesses and threats first of all, and all the good stuff comes in a minute. Weaknesses and threats to Grayshott. Through traffic volume, I don't suppose many people will query that one. Is there a solution to that? I think we might need one, but it comes to the point about identity in a minute. So through traffic volume hits on the issue of identity. Insufficient parking. A lot of people don't shop in Grayshott now because they can't park. Actually, there's a solution to that. It hits on identity. Affordable housing. We have still quite a lot of families in Grayshott who actually don't have a regular home to call their own. We don't have anybody in bed and breakfast in Grayshott, I'm glad to say, but we still have people who don't have their own home, and they're Grayshott people and they need housing. Another weakness and threat has been with us probably since, I guess, the Second World War, which is the dormitory mentality. So it doesn't mean that we're all a bit dozy. I'm really thinking about, well, that may be true in my case, I don't know. But the dormitory mentality, meaning the concept of an out-commuting settlement, where people only live in the settlement because that's where they sleep, and they actually work in London or Portsmouth or somewhere else. And actually, the trouble with dormitory communities is there are damaging risks to the sense of community. And I used to be an international commuter. That was what my job was for many, many years. I came to Grayshott in '77, didn't understand it until '99. Because in those 22 years, all I did was fly around the world, and I came back on the red eye on Friday night, Saturday morning, spent here the weekend, and got on the first flight out on Monday morning. So that's an issue. Burial space, which is extremely close to home here, but it remains an issue. Something. Most of these things are on my agenda, by the way, as it happens. Community meeting space. That may be a positive spin-off from losing the library, which is going to be closed at the end of this year. If you didn't know that, I'm sorry about that. But the space which it occupies is likely to be released for more community meeting space, so we may get something back on that. We have, and there's nothing personal in this at all, because it applies to me as well, we do have a rapidly ageing community. Actually, I don't know why I said rapidly ageing, because we still only age at 1 day per day. So it's not like Grayshott rages at 2 days per day. That would be a bizarre thing, wouldn't it? I think it means that the average age is going up quite rapidly, and that would be factually and statistically correct. We are advancing very fast, and it's because the greater body of this population is older than, let's say, 50. For example, the percentage aged over 65 now is 25 point something percent. And the previous time the census was done, which was about 10 years ago, it's 23 point something. So the percentage is going up. And that's largely because of the last two issues I have on weaknesses and threats. We seem to be not very attractive to young adults and children, and not very attractive to young families. Now, I think the young family thing comes back to house prices, because it's quite hard to buy a house if you, for example, neither of my children both got decent jobs. Neither of them could afford a house in Grayshott. So I think that is a bit of an issue. So those are the weaknesses and threats. In terms of the good stuff, opportunities and strengths, we have plenty, and there are a few cautionary notes about them. And then I come to the deep question. Opportunities and strengths. Shops. Got a fabulous range of shops. What I think we have to be careful of when you look at what's happening in retail generally, if you read the national press, Sainsbury's results, Tesco's results, yes, I know they made a mistake, but still their results weren't that great. We're seeing a situation where physical retail premises are struggling. And so Grayshott's heart, its business heart, is physical retail premises. And the question is, why would you shop in Grayshott? Comes onto the parking thing, it's a bit hard to park, that's a disincentive. But I'm struck by the fact that typically, and we have free car parking here, which is great, but in big towns with Alton and Petersfield you pay, it's about 60p an hour, so it's not exactly a lot. And what's interesting is people like me, and possibly like you, I still order off the internet. And yet the shipping charges for a typical internet order are £3.80, £4.55. The fuel and parking charge is often half of that, and yet I still order off the internet. So I think physical retail has got to face that challenge, and that's going to affect Grayshott. Convenience is key. It's got to be something that you really want to do. You've got to touch it, feel it, taste it, smell it, or it's got to be the best way of getting the thing that you want. Strength, we've got a tightly knit traditional community. We have. I mean, most people in here, I would say, are part of that tightly knit community that is such a feature of Grayshott. It's one of the massive strengths of the village. But having talked about young adults, children and young families, somehow I think we need to think about widening our tightly, I think I know everybody in this room actually, our tightly knit community, we kind of need to, we know each other now. We didn't know each other's names a few minutes ago, but we need to kind of open up, the embracing thing needs to be opened up a bit more to pull in some of these other folk. And if Anna Lebelska has just left, was saying that she's aware that in the centre of Grayshott, there are more accumulations of younger people, and you might say unwelcome because perhaps they're kind of hanging around rather than doing a thing. But if they're hanging around in Grayshott, isn't there something we could do to draw them, divert them, pull them in? I think that's a strength that we could develop even further. And it leads into my third point on strengths, which is we have an astonishing array of participation activities. If you come and live in Grayshott, there's almost nothing you can't do in this village as long as you find the right club or society or group. But we've got this age thing, so that's an adaptation opportunity for us to make our community a little wider than it is today. We've got a population, Jonathan I think touched on this, a population of immensely talented people. This village is spooky. The range of talent and the experiences and the skills of people who live in Grayshott, and yet, it's quite hard to find people to take on community leadership in Grayshott. I mean, you're stuck with me at the moment, and I'm getting tired. We had a bit of trouble filling the chairmanship of Buying Grayshott recently. It's quite a hard, high-profile job to do. These community leadership roles are not simple. They consume emotion, time, sometimes money, and yet we have all this talent somehow, not to mention our vicar, of course. We somehow need to find other people willing to come in and take some of the load, and the church here at St Luke's is no exception. We're looking for someone to help take the load off Maury as an assistant vicar. And then coming on to the last point before I do go a bit deep and philosophical, we're very close to main road and rail arteries. A3 Hindhead Tunnel, Hazelmere Railway Station are the main ones. But that does make it a very, very suitable community for building lots and lots of houses. Because that's the government's drive. Housing needs to be sustainable. Sustainable means access. Trains, cars, shops, schools, access to hospitals. This village has it all. It has it all. And so Jonathan mentioned, he said, is it a town? Is Headley Road the high street? Now, I think we're on the cusp here. I really do. And I think some hard decisions have got to be taken. Problem for me, let's be honest, I'm trying to be honest, I am old school. I am absolutely old school. Grayshott is a village. You call the Headley Road the High Street at your peril in my presence. I like to see a community with faces I recognise, who I bump into in Sainsbury or Co-op or whatever, and I know them and I work with them and they raise their issues with me, and I'm a community councillor and I like that. I go to other larger villages. Grayshott and Liverpool don't like to be called a town, but I think they might be actually. Alton and Petersfield, definitely towns. And I talk to their councillors. And we talk about stuff like electioneering, okay? I'm going to speak safely, don't worry, I'm going to speak safely on this topic. And I say, look, my electioneering, I go and I chat to people, I bump into, we have a chat, and they know me and I know them, but if they like me, they vote for me. If they don't like me, they don't vote for me. I never wear a rosette. I thought, we live in a town. I mean, I don't know any of these people. But, I mean, what you mean? You live in Petersfield and you don't know anybody. Yeah, I know my neighbours, but, you know, the housing's so dense, there are so many people. It's different. So are we going to try to stay a village? A bit of planning was up there earlier on, wasn't it? And I said to Maury, I'm not going to get into the spiritual side of this, but clearly you can see where this goes, can't you? This is not a difficult step to take, and the role of St Luke's in everything I'm talking about. This is a clear step that could be taken, and I'm kind of leaving these thoughts with you and Maury and everybody else. But what are we? We have an identity issue coming up about now. About now means kind of a 15-year window. You know, it's not going to happen, you know, tomorrow. But in a 15-year window, this village has to make up its mind what it wants to do, where it's going to go, how it wants to be perceived, who it wants to attract, how it wants the Headley Road to be, or is it going to be a high street? Are we going to lose the local gap? One of the density figures, by the way, that I've seen Jonathan use and other people have used, we're right beside Ludshot Common. So watch out, because that density is compensated by the colossal open spaces of Ludshot Common. That density in Hindhead, there isn't a Ludshot Common beside Hindhead. Okay, so, but we could lose that local gap down there, because if this is going to be urbanised around here, that could be thought of. Some of that could go for building. We know the National Trust build on National Trust land. On the other side of the road, that can be built on. So what do we want to be? I could stand up here with my colleagues back at the various councils, fight the good fight, fight the case. We shall not move, we are a village, and we are not going to budge from being a village. But the more we say we'd like more of this and more of that, some more houses, some more shops, some more car parks, maybe a multi-storey, you know, all this sort of, we've got to decide which way we're going to go. And I think we're right at the heart of a deep philosophical question. And I think all of us, including St Luke's as the heart of the community, could have a role to play in leading that discussion. And that's my conclusion on that point of philosophy. And thanks for the chance.